You're going to hear for yourself why this man did what he did and how he ended up leaving his well-paying job working for the government, getting paid close to $80,000 a year. The government provided a gun and a car, secure career, left it all with no job waiting, with wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage in the balance. Please help me give a warm hand and welcome my good friend and our student, Mr. Joseph R. Banister.
How's everybody?
Pretty
good. Okay, I'm supposed to take this out and introduce you. Everybody, is your mic on?
Nope.
They're telling me it's on. Anyway, I got a little home video for you. I want to see out anybody's way. Recognize that guy?
He's got the skinny on.
What's that you want back?
Ranger.
I'm out! Okay, I'm out in the sector all down. Looks good to me. Yeah, I go to that cover. Huh? All right, run for the cover now.
You like the way they put me on the right and I'm left-handed. They put the right hander on the left. So we have to totally expose ourselves. Good thing it's only training. It worked. This was in February of '96, so about 10 months before the beginning of the end in terms of me beginning the learning process. Yeah, we're just collecting taxes here.
Books and records hearing.
Drop the 1040.
Voluntary compliance.
It's called move and shoot. I think that's about it.
Bombinos.
Okay. Are you taking the podium away? Oh. That was my own video camera. Just had one of the other agents take some video of me, and of course I took it of them, and you know, I didn't really get into all that stuff. Oh, I see. All right. Well, I've never done that before, so I hope you enjoyed seeing what you're fighting law enforcement.
So did he file or not?
Did you file? actually brought a couple other little props here. This is right in line with the video that I showed you. It's kind of hard to see, and I apologize, but it's a picture of a kind of a federal agent-looking guy with a fedora. You know, the old FBI fedora on his head with sunglasses, and it says, "I'm your worst nightmare, an accountant with a gun." Because IRS special agents would, in general, would have some kind of accounting, either accounting degree, which actually was very rare, or at least some minimum level of accounting experience. In the whole water. Then the other, this is the shirt I would actually wear when I was doing that stuff in real life. We had to buy our own shirts. So we didn't. I didn't have to buy that vest. It's pretty ugly looking bulletproof vest there. Anyway, all these little mementos from a different time. Well, I've got about an hour, supposedly, or now even less. And it's a little difficult as time goes on. It's been, I just celebrated my 5-year anniversary of having resigned from the IRS. So I resigned on my birthday in 1999, so now 2004. It's been an incredible experience, to say the least. The other difficulty is I'm not sure, if all of you know all about me or not. How many people know the story? Okay, that's what I was afraid of. It's a good story. Well, maybe I'll kind of try to, make it quick so that I don't belabor little points that many of you probably heard a million times. But I, in my early or late 20s, decided that I was bored being an accountant. Now, shouldn't I have already known when I got my degree that I'd be bored being an accountant? But that was really the case, and I decided to look into law enforcement as a way to spice up my life a bit. So I started stage. So I went ahead and pursued law enforcement applications, and it turned out that the ones that were the best to my liking was the FBI, and believe it or not, the IRS. The IRS was more just a backup application, and I wasn't really expecting to work there. I really wanted to work for the FBI. That was back when they had a little better reputation than they do today. So I applied to both, and the FBI application went very quickly. I thought that it eventually would lead to a ticket to Quantico, Virginia, but then all of a sudden there was a kind of everything stopped cold because they had a budget crisis with a hiring freeze and couldn't be hired. So I'm waiting, and it was about August of '93. The IRS criminal investigation called me, and meanwhile, during this couple of year process of waiting for the FBI, I had no contact from the IRS, and had almost forgotten that I made the application. And then all of a sudden, the San Francisco office calls me and says, "Hey, would you be interested in a special agent position with us?" And for those of you that don't know, or I guess you do now, you've seen the video. But the IRS has its own cadre of special agents, criminal investigators, just like the FBI, the Secret Service, the Customs Service, the INS, the alphabet soup agencies that everybody knows about. And so the IRS called me, the San Francisco office, and asked me if I'd be interested, and I really wasn't that interested. I had kind of done it as a backup. And as I tell people, I didn't really have that many friends as it was. And if I was going to go work for the IRS, I'd have no friends. But it turned out that since it was the criminal investigation division, I didn't hang out with criminals. So I thought, well, I'm going to go after the real bad guys, and it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, people won't step away from me when I'm at parties, and you know, 'cause I'm not going to shake them down for their lunch receipts and things like the average IRS auditor would. So I went ahead and interviewed and went through a second background investigation. Everything went fine, and in November of 1993, I was actually sworn in as a special agent for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. The day of my swearing in was especially important to me. Normally what happens in the IRS and other agencies is that they'll have a big group of people, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, you know, big room or big office, and everybody just holds up their hand and, you know, you give the oath and it's just very perfunctory, nobody seems to care. Well, I was able to be sworn in by the chief of the San Francisco area, and it was all by myself. So I had my wife and my mom and my older son there to watch. My youngest brother also is actually a police officer now. Watch me take my oath. I have it on video. Maybe next time I'll show that home video. So, but I took this oath, and I mean, I really, you know, I'm kind of a naive guy, as you've probably been able to gather by now. It meant a lot to me to take that oath. And I didn't really know, I knew enough about the income tax, I thought, to do the enforcement, be a CPA, you know, get the degree in accounting that I had. But I was really proud to take that oath, because in my mind I thought, you know, I'm going to be able to use my financial skills now to serve my country, protect the treasury. I, you know, just waved that flag, and I was really, really excited. And so that was November of '93, and interesting little story. My first day on the job, which actually I think was before I went over to be sworn in, I didn't have any cases. You know, we call them cases, with the file with your name in it, you know. And so I didn't have anything to do, really, but there were the Internal Revenue Code and the Code of Federal Regulations were there on the shelf. So I'm just looking around, you know, twiddling my thumbs, looking for something to do. And so I pulled down a copy of the Internal Revenue Code, and I flipped to the 7,000 section, which is like where all those criminal, you know, statutes are. 7201 for tax evasion, 7206 for material misstatement, 7203 failure to file. And so I started looking at these sections, and my boss, he comes over to me and he says, "What are you doing?" And I was sitting, you know, well, I'm just looking at the Internal Revenue Code. I mean, these are the sections I'm going to be investigating, and I didn't expect I have to explain this, but I'm just looking at the Internal Revenue Code and looking what sections I'm going to be investigating. He says, "Shut that book. You're not a CPA anymore. You're a special agent for the IRS. You don't need to be looking at that book." Whoa. Talk about culture shock. That was my first day on the job. Things got a little better from that point forward. I was sent to training. I guess maybe that was better. I sent to training in January of '94, and spent about 16 weeks in Glencoe, Georgia, and really put my wife through hell. I had already taken about a $20,000 pay cut to take the job with the IRS. And then I went off to 2 8-week sessions to get trained to become a federal criminal investigator. During my training, I was elected class president. And then when I came back for the second 8-week session, I was re-elected class president. So my fellow trainees liked me and got along well with them. I also earned a 95% academic average. And I qualified as an expert in firearms use. I definitely wasn't there to put my feet up on the desk and just earn a government paycheck. I was very motivated, very excited to have the job. March, April time frame, came back to the San Francisco office, and then before long was transferred to the San Jose office, which is actually my hometown, San Jose, California. Anybody from the Bay Area? A few? Okay, good. So I thought that this would have been mid to late '94. I thought, what could be better about life? Here I am, a federal lawman, doing a great job, and I'm working in my hometown. You know, because normally federal agents, they have to move all over the country, especially the FBI and Customs Service. here I am in my own hometown, and we go out and do surveillances, and I'm one of the few guys that actually knows all the streets, and not getting lost. And my nickname was Spider-Man, not because I'm real skinny, but because I used to do anything to go spying on people. I'd hide in a bush, I'd climb up on a building, you know, you name it, I do it. So I earned the nickname Spider-Man. The first 3 years of my career at the IRS, I have to say I really enjoyed myself. And you know, you might think, well, how can you enjoy being an IRS agent unless you're just this power-hungry creep, you know? Again, I had this feeling that I was doing the right thing. And I knew the IRS had, you know, a bad reputation, but I thought in my small way I was, you know, could help to change that. And I definitely tried to for the first 4 years. So in December of '96, again, 3 years of very interesting work. I was working joint investigations with the FBI, the DEA, U.S. Customs Service, Secret Service, doing a lot of money laundering investigations, some tax investigations, and you know, going after people that I thought were pretty bad news, you know, especially the money launderers. Then in December of '96, I was listening to a talk radio show up in Northern California. The station's KSFO, and the host isn't there anymore. His name is Jeff Metcalf. His website, by the way, is jeffmetcalf.com. And he spells his first name Geoff. Jeff had this lady on his show whose name was D.V. Kidd, D-E-V-V-Y, Kidd, K-I-D-D. And so if you can picture, I'm driving in my government car, listening to this, you know, conservative talk radio show. And I love this talk show host because, believe it or not, I liked his stance on the Constitution. I liked he was very pro Second Amendment, you know, actually pro Bill of Rights, pro Constitution, very truthful man, still is to this day as far as I'm concerned. But this day in December '96, I'm listening to the show, and he has this lady, D.D. Kidd, on there as a guest, and she's saying, you know, things about the income tax, like that it's voluntary. And she talks about the 16th Amendment, and we don't, the places, or, you know, the uses of our tax money isn't what we think. And, you know, as I'm listening to the show, I've got my 6-hour 9mm on my left hip and the handcuffs and the small of my back, and I'm thinking to myself, lady, this income tax is not voluntary. But the next thought, or another thought that came into my head was, well, wait a second, Joe. Here you've been listening to this Jeff Metcalf guy for a year or two, maybe longer, and your impression of him has always been that he was truthful, that he had honest guests, honorable guests, and now all of a sudden he's having this crazy lady on the radio saying that, you know, most Americans aren't required to pay the income tax. And so I thought, well, that's a problem for me because I'm a criminal investigator and I need to be able to read people and determine whether they're lying or telling me the truth. And if I can't even tell whether or not this talk show host is on the level, then I think I've got kind of a problem. I may not make it through this career. So I decided to start looking at the evidence that she talked about at the show. Would somebody mind giving me a cup of water? I spilled my other water. Excuse me. Here. You see me speak, I always have to drink the water. You know what it is. Another career living. Sorry. So anyway, I ordered these 2 little booklets that Dee talked about, and they're still published. They're like $1 or $2 a piece. Why a Bankrupt America is one, and Blind Loyalty is the other. By the way, her website is dv.com. David Edward Victor Victor Yellow.com. So I ordered the booklets, and they were heavily supported by other books and bibliographies. And so I started to read those books, and I'm sorry, my throat is a little dry today. She also included in the books actual telephone numbers of these people that made these, what at the time were sounded just outrageous claims. The 16th Amendment was fraudulently ratified, the Federal Reserve, New World Order. I'm like, wow, this is pretty heavy stuff. But as I continued to read, I continued to see, other books and things that corroborated what she said. And then I decided to actually call some of these people and just come out and ask them about their evidence. And I did that. And actually, I don't really have time to go into it, but I called some of the more prominent people that the IRS used to refer to as illegal tax protesters. They don't refer to them that way anymore. Actually, an attorney in the movement helped to put a stop to that. And the entire culture of the IRS, at least part of it, had to change. And they couldn't sit around in their lunchroom anymore and laugh about illegal tax protesters and call them by that name. Just so happened that that's what they call a bill of attainder. And the government realized after decades of doing that that was an illegal practice, so they stopped. Meanwhile, 20 or 30 years of people had to put up with being labeled an illegal tax protester without any hearing, without any due process whatsoever. But, that's the way it goes, according to the IRS. So I spent, this would have been January of 97, all of 97, all of 98, researching, speaking with people, with them. I even attended meetings. And I knew how the IRS agents would go in, and like they probably are today. I'm sure there are IRS agents in this audience. So I'd be kind of concerned. I didn't want people to think I was spying on them. So what did I do? I just went and told them. Hi, my name is Joe Banister, and by day I'm a special agent with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I'm really just here just to learn. And as you can see here today, it was true, but I'm sure that people were a little bit hesitant to believe me that I was really there for that purpose. Nonetheless, that was my purpose. And fortunately, there were people that, although they might have been wondering in the back of their mind if I was going to pull out my handcuffs or something, they shared information with me, which was fortunate because I needed to get information. And if I would have, run into people who weren't willing to share it, that would have presented a problem for me because I really was on a fact-finding mission. It just so happened that I noticed, or I began to notice that the IRS had this posture of not answering questions, of answering questions that were never asked, of being very, suspicious and kind of mysterious about dealing with the public and answering these kinds of questions. And the IRS would tell me in training and in their literature that people that were, tax protesters were kooks. The stuff that they produced was they, cut and paste little stuff on a copy machine and bring it out to people and tell them that, this is the truth. And I found that it was completely the opposite of what the IRS led me to believe. People actually had solid evidence. Evidence about the 16th Amendment, evidence about the way that the monetary system works, evidence about the lack of liability statutes. I mean, you name it. I could spend hours talking about all the different issues relating to the income tax. But the bottom line was, these people who had every reason to mistrust me shared all kinds of evidence with me. And, I was a criminal investigator, so I thrived on evidence, and they gave me plenty of it. Well, after a couple of years of this, and I have to really just summarize and kind of keep on moving. After a couple of years of this, it got to be quite overwhelming. and quite contrary to where I expected it to go. I expected that within, a few days, a few weeks, I would encounter this information, see that it was a crock, and just go back to my life of, shooting guns and have fun. And that never occurred. Every page I would turn, every new book I would get, every new trip to the law library, I'd uncover more evidence that the IRS was deceiving people, that they were selectively prosecuting people, that they were selectively publicizing their success and burying their weaknesses, their losses. In fact, I don't know how many of you have heard of the case Lloyd Long, back from 1993. You know that I never heard about that case until like 1997 or 1998 through people like D.V. Kidd. Now, doesn't that seem kind of odd? That I wouldn't, you want to hear, especially if you're in a battle, you kind of want to hear about your wins and your losses. But strangely, never heard about Lloyd Long. Never heard that someone presented evidence, a jury got to hear it, and they were acquitted of failure to file charges. Pretty profound, if you ask me. But that information was never shared with me. But bottom line is that by the end of '98, it had gotten to the point where I had such overwhelming evidence that I realized I had to, I couldn't continue to do my job as I had done and retain my conscience, my integrity. it just bothered me so much. And so I actually called D.V. Kidd, and I said to her, D.V., you didn't know this, but I was listening that day in December '96, and I heard what you said, and I investigated it, and I found out that you were right. And for those of you that have seen D.V. or seen her speak, she's very matter of fact. She's like, well, of course. Like, of course I was right. How dare you spend so long doubting me? She didn't say that, but she's a great lady. Anyway, but she was also very direct with me. She said, well, that's fantastic for you, Joe, but what are you going to do about it? And fortunately, I had plenty of time to think about these things over the months as I'm learning this information and seeing it, completely contrary to what I expected to find. And so I had an answer prepared, even though I wasn't prepared for the question, and that was, well, Dee, I'm going to speak up about it. I told myself that I would speak up about this no matter who was lying and who was telling the truth. I have to admit, I was expecting that you would be the one I'd be reporting on as the liar. But it turns out that the people that I believe are lying, work for the same agency I do. And so I told her I was going to speak up. And I decided to put together a report that was about 90 pages long and summarize some of the highlights of the evidence that I had encountered. And by no means all of the evidence, but just, I just kind of started writing and wanted to reduce to writing some of the information that I had come across. Well, in February of 1999, I decided it was time to actually submit this evidence to my immediate supervisor with a request that it be sent up the chain of command up to and including Commissioner Rosati, who was the commissioner at the time. And I asked them, I basically said, look, I've gone to bat for the agency and the income tax. I've applied all of my professional horsepower to this issue, and I've come up with some very disturbing information. And I'd like you to evaluate it and show me the error of my analysis, if any. And I also said that if you can't show me the error of my analysis, I'll be forced to resign. Because I knew that I couldn't serve two masters. I had reached the point where I convinced myself that there were some serious, serious issues with the way the IRS was administering the income tax, and I needed those questions and concerns addressed, or else I couldn't continue in the job. Well, there's a lot of things that went on between my boss and my chief, and it's, I don't want to spend the time doing that because I want to make sure I come come up to the present. But needless to say, they were not too receptive to my concerns. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that people look at me and they think, wow, that guy seems really sincere. You know, he seems really just very good natured, and you know, I seem that way because I am. I mean, that's the way I would act with my bosses, and I don't have any axes to grind. I figured that these people that I submitted my information to and my concerns to, they took the same oath that I did. Some of them, well, my immediate boss went to the same church that I did. He even went to the same high school that I did, where they beat into our heads to be a man for others. So I thought, you know, I'm sure these people aren't going to be too thrilled with this information, but of course I wasn't too thrilled with it either. I mean, I wasn't thrilled with the prospect that I was part of this huge, ugly problem. Well, in response to my request that it be reviewed, my chief elevated it up, I guess, above them, you could say, to higher levels. And the response came down from those higher levels, and the response was that they were not going to be responding to my report and my concerns, and that they would provide me with the paperwork necessary to tender my resignation. And also to send me home for a week to think about it. So they didn't fire me, but they sent me home to think about it for a week, what I was going to do next. And so while I was at home during my unplanned vacation, dodging the frying pan for my wife. And, you know, of course, she'd been seeing me doing all this reading all along. And, you know, the poor woman, you have to live through a $20,000 pay cut to get the job. Live through a husband being gone for 16 weeks. And then at the end of 5 years, say, honey, the income tax is a fraud. What a fantastic woman I'm married to, still, thank God. But, you know, it's just, there's a lot of mental anguish that's gone through this process. Of course, it didn't end when I left. But anyway, they would not address my questions, sent me home. I decided I definitely burned a bridge here, and went ahead and composed my resignation letter. Which of course is available on my website, freedomabovefortune.com. And basically listed all the concerns I had with the Commissioner Rosati, and resigned on February 25th, 1999. So I guess learned that was just the beginning of a very interesting life for me. Actually, I think my first public speaking engagement was here. I think it was, I don't know if it was at this hotel, but it was Freedom Law School. Paymon was instrumental in lining up people for me to talk to while I was doing my investigation. You know, I certainly wasn't a public speaker then, and even now I just, you know, have to drink lots of water, as you can see. A little less nervous, but nonetheless, you know, wasn't in this to have to get up on stages and talk about all this personal stuff, but oh well. So anyway, I began to do speaking. I got a website. I was basically very concerned, maybe paranoid is a better word. Even federal agents can be paranoid, and I thought, you know, this agency, they must not like what I'm saying, and I think I better get as much publicity as I can so that people know that I exist, so that I will continue to exist. So there's so many interesting things I'd love to talk about, but you'll hopefully, if you're here for both days, Bob Schultz is going to be speaking tomorrow. He can kind of walk you through all the We the People information. Does everybody know about We the People Foundation? Okay. What an honor for me to have Bob Schultz in the world, where he learned about my resignation and kind of picked up the ball and ran with it and said, by golly, that special agent's question should have been answered. And Bill Benson's question should have been answered. And I mean, he's just done amazing things and worked very, very hard to get this issue into the IRS's backyard. We've spent, I see people in the audience, so people have traveled back to Washington, D.C. numerous times to eliminate the excuse that, they just couldn't fly out to see us. We actually went to Washington, D.C. and tried to have these symposiums and get questions answered. And, not surprisingly, for those of you who have been following this issue, the IRS is reticent to respond to these kinds of questions, unless it's in a very, very controlled environment. In fact, it wasn't long ago, and Bob can give you more details about this, that they actually did answer a question about answering our questions. And the IRS brass said that they were going to answer our questions, or actually they were in the process of answering our questions, and they were going to answer the questions through enforcement. I mean, that, you didn't already have it. That should give you kind of the mentality there that what they're saying is, we're not going to pull up a chair and have a talk with you, the citizens we're supposed to serve. We're going to pull out a club. We're going to get a bigger gun. We're going to get more soldiers. And that's what I think is so telling about this issue, is that rather than, they didn't realize that this particular little special agent, would actually get some media attention and actually, that the thing would kind of grow legs and get bigger. So, we can grant to them, you didn't have to answer Joe Banister's questions. You underestimated his concern. And then after 5 some odd years of the We the People Foundation, and of course just all the people that aren't even associated with We the People who are asking questions, well, they don't want to answer your questions. All they do is continue to uptick enforcement, scaring people. And I mean, I'm that little naive guy, right? But to me, if the bottom line is collecting a tax, it just seems to me that they would get so much more cooperation if they pulled up the chair. I mean, we are talking about the United States of America, right? The land of the free, the home of the brave. But they don't pull up a chair, they pull out a club, or a bigger club. And that's what they continue to do. And it's very telling to me that, the system is about gun to the head taxation. They put a nice face on it. They'll tell you that their mission is to, apply the tax laws fairly with integrity to all. And they're all about service. And they're trying to increase, the service that they give you on the telephone. And all these things that they're trying very hard to do. But behind the scenes, they're getting out that club. And the bigger club, and more clubs, and more soldiers. And it seems to me, anyone that's willing to pay attention can see that they're acting like an agency that's operating beyond its authority. I don't know quite else how to describe it.
I think they're connected with Al-Qaeda.
Well, it is a shame that everyone reads in the papers about how we must help the other countries to gain freedom and democracy and all these kinds of things. And yet here at home, the IRS and the Department of Justice is hammering on good citizens. Just hammering on them. And there's something doesn't compute. And it didn't for me. Let's see, I'll make sure that I capture all that I've been through in a span of about an hour. Anyway, the We the People experience has been tremendous. Went to Senate hearings and actually saw my picture and the pictures of John Turner and Sherry Jackson up on an easel, this big, huge easel, right there in the Senate chambers. There were just batteries of media people. And there's my picture up on the easel. You think I should be excited about it? You know that they never mentioned my name? You know that Bob attempted to get himself and all of us to testify, and they refused to allow us to testify? They didn't want to hear from the very guy that was on the easel. Does that seem odd? It did to me. So just tremendous efforts from Bob Scholes, We the People, but also just everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are concerned. They're making their own sacrifices in their lives, and I've met, many people like that, and I just want to let you know that I'm much, much happier knowing that I'm among people where principle and courage and integrity mean something. The question was if I'm going to open up to questions and answers. I don't think I'm going to have time. But
What's going on right now? What's happening with you right now?
Okay. I'm going to fast forward to what's happening now or lately. During, obviously, losing my secure government job, I had to go out and find work. Most of my work was in accounting. I really shied away from helping people with IRS matters. But eventually people call and they're just like in these desperate circumstances. People are under criminal investigation, and so more and more I would do things to help people. Still not a big part of my making a living, but a certain sizable part. So part of that would involve actually going to the IRS or calling them on the phone and on behalf of people, taxpayers, as the IRS calls them. And being that I'm a CPA, I'm one of the authorized people to actually go into the IRS arena and, duke it out with the IRS. And as you might imagine, I'm not afraid of them. And so things don't really go very smoothly when I assist clients. I'm very professional, very calm, but I'm dogged in terms of defending my client, and dogged in terms of pointing out the fraudulent manner in which the IRS got the client to the point they got him to. Now you contrast that with what most CPAs, probably every other CPA does, which is, can you turn up your checkbook real quickly? Not that I can necessarily blame them. They don't have the information that I do, either out of fear or ignorance. I don't know, but I don't do that. I will if that's what they want to do. Fine. I basically want to do what the client wants to do. I'm their representative. Well, if I have a client who believes that they've never been made liable for the tax, they weren't required to file, et cetera, well, then I go in there and I plead their case, so to speak. I'm not an attorney, but I go into these administrative hearings and I plead their case. I'm their advocate, as I think I have an ethical duty to be. If they're going to hire me, I'm going to do my very best. Well, as you might imagine, the IRS is not happy with my presentations. And I've come to learn that they have a little division inside the IRS that used to be called the Director of Practice. It's now called now it's called the Office of Professional Responsibility. They've changed the name. They still have a director. But this Office of Professional Responsibility, or Director of Practice, which has been known for years, is out there policing CPAs and attorneys and enrolled agents, people that will actually represent clients before the IRS. Now, I never asked the IRS for any permission to represent my client. My relationship is with my client. My client needs help with an IRS matter. But the IRS has somehow got this director of practice who, monitors my every move. And I didn't learn this until we started to dig into this issue. Because what happened was the IRS decided they were going to file a complaint against me for the presentations, for the information that I gave on behalf of a couple of clients. And so they filed this complaint, I believe it was March of 2003, and they alleged that I was engaging in disreputable conduct. Now, I'm going to describe to you what disreputable conduct they're accusing me of, but I think you better cover the ears of the little children, okay? Because it's pretty nasty. Good. I submitted facts and evidence that the 16th Amendment was fraudulently ratified. The little boy over there has his ears covered. Cover them again, son, because there's more. It's pretty bad. I also submitted copies of sections out of the Internal Revenue Code and the Code of Federal Regulations. I guess unfortunately I've been told I only have 5 minutes. So how do I fast forward this really quickly?
More time.
Unfortunately, the IRS didn't like these presentations, and they alleged that I was frivolous in bringing forth this information, and that I did so willfully. And they filed this complaint. We filed an answer to the complaint. I was supposed to get a hearing, but the IRS decided that I would not have a hearing. The IRS, during the period when I was supposed to have the hearing, they actually scheduled it for a military installation in San Francisco Bay. There's it's called Coast Guard Island.
I don't believe that, Joe. They wouldn't do that.
Leo doesn't Coast Guard Island, you can only get to it with a bridge, and it's secure. They have to look at your license and your license plate, and you don't get on or off that island unless some MPs say you can. And they wanted to hold the hearing there. And I remember sending out a notice to I've got about 5,000 people on my email list, saying that if you're a murderer, a rapist, or a child molester, you get not only your day in court, but you get a public day in court. But if you're a CPA and former IRS special agent, you get hauled off to a military installation for the tribunal. Now, it's okay. You don't have to worry about this because the IRS has said from the beginning that this is about protecting the public. So rest assured, the best way to protect you is to make sure you don't get to go to Joe Banister's hearing. And by the way, since there might be a chance you might go to the hearing, they decided to just not have the hearing at all. To afford you the ultimate protection. So, let's see, I got to really wrap this up quick because I don't like going over to the next person. Let's see. All this information. Bottom line is that they never gave me the hearing. They did have a sanctioned proceeding, which is what they called it, which is where they would decide not whether or not I should hang, but how high I should hang. And the only government witness to testify in that case, we believe, perjured himself on the stand. Because he said on the stand something quite different from what he said in his affidavit. So of course we'll be exploring that. That was on December 1st, the sanctioned proceeding occurred. December 24th, the administrative law judge, who, if you can believe it, was from the Environmental Protection Agency. Which environment do you think is protected? He issued what they call an initial decision, this is December 23rd, ordering that I should be disbarred. Now, I never applied to any bar. I don't know that the IRS even has a bar. But that judge felt that I should be disbarred. We had 30 days from December 23rd to January, well, by January 23rd, we had to appeal this initial decision from the administrative law judge. And we did that. So right now, my case is being appealed to the Secretary of the Treasury. And I just know he's going to rule in my favor. So I'm just counting the days. After it goes to the Secretary of the Treasury, by the way, all of this information, or a great deal of it, is on my website at freedomabovefortune.com. There's a place called IRS Lockout Update, and you can read all the documents, because strangely, I'm not afraid of scrutiny of what I've done. I'm happy to hold up my reputation against the IRS's anytime. Once the Secretary rules, conceivably, or once he rules, then this decision becomes final. And at that point, I guess I would not be able to actually assist clients with IRS, coming into the IRS on their behalf or calling on the phone. Then we would appeal to federal court and start a whole new set of appeals outside of the IRS, which is really where it's been this whole time. These are all IRS administrative issues. So,
It's the only place you're going to get any relief, though.
big surprise that the IRS, has ruled against me at every stage, and they've been pulling all the strings. So, there's still hope, and I'm going to be updating my website with the latest information. I would invite you to sign up to my email list if you want. If you don't want to, I understand. Who likes to be on lists? But I do have about 5,000 people on the list, and I do send out updates as far as the latest on the Joe Banister story. And I know the fish story that's getting out there is the fish is getting bigger and bigger. Joe, when did you get out of prison? So the word travels, and it travels, takes a lot of different courses. I haven't been put in prison yet. If that's where I got to go to prove that the IRS is doing this,